Hi everybody, hope you're doing marvellously well. I feel very privileged and very honoured to be sitting here with the rather wonderful Mr. Al Schmitt.
Well, I feel privileged and honoured to be here.
Well, firstly, thank you, Paula, because she let us come in here in, I don't know, arguably one of the finest studios and one of the finest rooms in the world.
Yeah.
Studio A of Capitol.
Absolutely. It's amazing.
When did you first ever work in here? Do you remember?
Yeah, the first time I did anything here was in 1976. Michael Frank's album. I think it was called Sleepin' Gypsy. Anyway, yeah, it was my first time. And I fell in love with it then. It was a whole different configuration.
Oh, it was? What was different about it?
There was a tiny little control room over in the corner there with, like, I think we had 12 inputs on the board. And there were no ISO booths. It was just all big studio.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there was just...
So you were just baffling things off?
Yeah, you used gobos to baffle off things.
And what was, I don't remember that record, so what was the instrumentation on that record?
It was drums, 2 guitars, keyboards, vocal, strings.
Strings?
Yeah.
Did you cut the strings live with the
No, we did the strings, overdubbed the strings on it. Yeah, that was great. And then the next one I did was Breezin' with George Benson.
Oh, one of my favorite albums.
Yeah, I did that here. There's a great story on that, too. We did, I don't know, 6 songs or something like that for the album, and 5 of the songs were the first take.
Wow.
I mean, it was unbelievable. So anyway, we're doing it. We got 3 or 4 songs done. I've got everybody in a circle around the drummer, percussion, keyboards, and guitars, and George with his guitar. And, okay, we're going to do the vocal now. So I figured, well, we're all sitting around the drummer. I hadn't planned on putting a really good mic up there, so I just looked around and there was an Electro Voice 666. You know that mic?
No, I don't.
Funny looking mic. Anyway.
But I should remember it.
So I grabbed it and I put it on George. I figured we'll overdub the vocal later. So this will be just a guide thing. He killed it. The vocal. That's the vocal on the record, on that mic. So again, you know, you go back to this thing, it's all about performance. And we captured that. Thank God we got that. And even though it wasn't the greatest mic in the world, if you listen to the record, it sounds pretty good. Yeah.
Breezing is an absolutely, well, first of all, it's a beautiful record sonically,
fun record.
Beautiful songs.
Yeah. Klaus Hogerman did the strings and woodwinds.
Massive worldwide.
Yeah.
I remember.
Great. One of my favorites.
And George has that, and he has a connection between his brain and his fingers, that if he plays a melody, he can sing it exactly with it.
Oh, you know, exactly. And, you know, you'll be out there talking to George, you know, he'll be sitting on the studio, he'll be chatting between takes or whatever, and he's talking to you, and he starts playing stuff, and you go, George, what the hell was that? I mean, he's just phenomenal. Phenomenal.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a voice and what a guitar player. That's really unfair.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It is.
To be that good of a singer and that good of a guitarist.
Yeah.
His version of this Masquerade, the Leon Russell song.
Yeah.
First of all, Leon's version is unbelievable.
Oh, absolutely. He wrote the song.
He wrote the song, but George's version, whoa.
Yeah.
That's what really turned me on.
I'm telling you, first take, 1 take down, Tommy said, "Oh my God, that's fantastic. That's it." And I was saying, "Well, wait a minute. I
was still trying to.
No, I mean that mic. We should. You know, I wanted to put a 47 on him.
Yeah.
But that was it. No way. They weren't going to do it again.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Cool.
I mean, where do you go from there? What was after that?
Well, after that, I did Unforgettable with Natalie Cole. That was a pretty great record. That was done here. Total 4.
Great record.
Some stuff on, I mixed a few things on Asia. Peg and Deacon Blues. I don't know, the Grammys just kept mounting up, and Diana Krall, all those Diana Krall records, and one of my favorite artists. I love Diana, and as a person, and she's just an amazing singer and player.
Great piano. Another very, very highly talented musician and singer.
Absolutely. And, you know, I was fortunate Shirley Horn, Here's to Life with Johnny Mandel. That was another great record that I did. There's so many, I can't remember them all.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You quickly moved rather fast over Steely Dan, of course, which I think for so many of us is
Steely
massive.
Dan, well, yeah, and they were great. And Elliot Shiner, who did a lot of the recording, and Bill Schnee did some. I didn't do any of the recording. The only recording I did was on FM, no static. I did that. And we did it here at Capitol.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I mixed that too. I got a Grammy for that, but that was the last time you could get a Grammy for a single. They stopped it. Best Engineering Grammy.
I wonder why they did that.
And they stopped it. From then on, it had to be an album. So, yeah, Steely Dan. But, when we did Peg, which was the first one I did, it took us like 12 hours to do one mix. I never did that in my life. It was before automation. So we all had a part, One guy was adding echo to the guitar solo and then back off. Another guy was doing something else. And, Gary Katz, the producer, was doing something. And I was putting all the pieces together on the board. And then every time we'd get it down and someone would say, "Oh, that was great, I got that." Somebody else would say, "No, I missed my part." And we'd do it again. We kept doing it 12 hours.
12 hours.
And we finally got it, and where everybody looked at one another and smiled and said, "Okay, we all did our part right."
Yeah.
Because, there were 4 of us on the board. Yeah, it was kind of a fun time.
Yeah.
But kind of a strenuous time in a sense.
Yeah.
Because, you'd get it right and you think, "Oh man, that was great. And someone else had just didn't do the echo right on the guitar solo or something and have to do it over again." So that's why I love automation today.
Sure.
You don't have to go through all that.
Which is your favorite room to mix in here?
I like to mix here in A.
Yep.
It's a great room when I can get. I love the 88R, and I mix in C.
When you and I were together, we were in C.
Yeah, I do a lot of mixing there. Yeah, those are my 2 favorites.
Yeah.
I love working here. They have a great maintenance staff. Nothing ever goes wrong. I mean, if something isn't, they just change it right away.
Yeah.
You're never down more than 10 minutes at the most. And some studios you go in and something breaks down and you're sitting around for 45 minutes and you got a band out there and, it kind of takes the wind out of your sails. And none of that ever happens here.
I think that's the reason why there's like half a dozen studios in LA that have survived. And this is obviously a flagship one, is because they all have techs.
Yeah. Yeah, good techs, yeah.
Good techs.
Yeah, you work over at United, that's great rooms.
Yep. Sunset Sound has 2 techs.
Sunset Sound is great. I love that's where I did Total 4, that's all those tracks were done in there. Village, it's great. Yep. Jeff has got that place humming, it's really, really cool. So yeah, we're blessed here. You go back to New York and it's pretty hard other than Avatar, which is now the power station again. I love that room. That's a great room, a great desk. But now it's Berklee bought it, and I'm not sure how much chance we're going to have to, rent it to do records. They're going to shut it down for a little while.
Oh, they are?
Yeah, they're going to reconstruct stuff. I don't think they're messing with the room.
Good.
But they're going to do some other things and move an elevator and stuff, whatever. I'm not sure exactly, but yeah. And then, of course, London, we have Air. And
it was successfully sold to somebody that's going to maintain it, aren't they?
Yeah. And that's a great room. I did, I mixed a Robbie Williams Swing When You're Winning album there. Huge, 17 million album that sold. Yeah, that was a great record.
Now, obviously, being English, I know Robbie Williams.
Oh, he was like the Beatles. I mean, he couldn't go anywhere. That's why he moved here to California, because he couldn't go out on the street. When I was working with him there, he and his buddies would hang out together all the time, and I'd be doing the mixing. When they were done, they'd go to his place and play games and do stuff. He just never went out because he'd get mobbed everywhere he went.
Yeah, I'm not that good at being structured. You know, I don't think that sits. I don't know about you, but I think that suits the creative mind quite so much.
Yeah, I agree.
I like to just sort of walk in and start working.
Yeah, I do too. I'm pretty much the same way. Except before, if I'm recording or whatever, then I'm there 3 hours ahead of time.
Right.
Checking out mics, making sure phasing's right, you know, making sure everything is perfect the way we want it. And then Steve Jennewick and I usually work together, and then we'll have a cup of coffee and relax and wait for the guys to show up. So
knowing that you're all prepared.
Yeah, we're all ready to go. Yeah,
that's amazing.
Great. Yeah, walking in on a session at the last minute is nuts. Yeah. I don't recommend it.
No, we were just talking about that off camera because we were originally booked in B, and I went into B, and I'm standing there waiting.
And nobody's here. What happened?
What happened? And then I walk in here.
Where's my cameraman?
I walk in here like 5 minutes after we're supposed to start, like completely embarrassed because you.
No problem.
But you know how it is. You want to be.
I got here about 11:45, and
Great.
Went up. I visited with Paula, who runs this joint, and I stopped in, hung out with Steve a little bit, and came over here and made sure he knew where the coffee was, the cameraman, and that was it. I stole all the M&M peanuts that my kids did, bring them home for the family.
Great.
That's it. It's my job for the day.
And just walking down the hall, we heard some Beach Boys coming out there.
Yeah. They're doing the Beach Boys stuff that was with the London Symphony that they did, that we released. And he's doing it in Atmos.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We did the same thing. He didn't do it in Atmos yet, but I'm sure he will, with the Carpenters. We just finished that. It just came out, the album. And I mixed, I think it was 18 songs.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really cool. Boy, she could sing.
Oh, absolutely
Karen
amazing.
Carver. Truly one of the great ones.
My mother would play the Carpenters like all day in the 70s.
I know, well.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're amazing. And the fact that we were able to just hear her track alone. And
Incredible.
I mean, her pitch was perfect. She could hold notes out forever. She was just amazing. God bless her.
Yep. So did you record many of the records?
No, I didn't record any of the records.
You didn't?
I mixed 20 of them 10 years ago maybe in Surround.
Wow.
And then when they did this, they did, this is the thing with the London Symphony, where they took off, some of the drums and some of the keyboards and added new drums, new keyboards, and then added the London Symphony. They took off all the old string things. And I got to mix that and 18 songs. And
amazing.
Yeah, it was great. And fun. I mean, she, just listening. And every time I took, I finally got a ref from Eric, and I got home and I was playing it for my wife, and we were sitting in the living room and listening. And it's just like every song that came up was a hit.
Wow.
It was just like, my wife said, I remember that.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was great. It's a great album. It's a great Christmas present for people who want a nostalgic kind of thing. It's great.
She has such a beautiful, pure voice.
Totally. Yeah, totally.
Many, many decades before auto-tune.
Yeah.
there was a woman that could sing so beautifully.
Yeah, auto-tune. What the hell is that? When I started many, many years ago, there was no such thing as auto-tune. There was no such thing as fixing vocals. Everything was done mono. And people had to know how to sing, and had to know how to sing in tune. And if there was something a little off, somebody a little sharp or a little flat in a spot, if the emotion that was the take. You couldn't fix it, so you either had to do another take or go with that one. So, yeah, I was spoiled, just totally spoiled by working with all those great singers, Rosemary Clooney and and Frank Sinatra, and you name it. So.
How did you get your start? How did you get into this?
Well, when I was a little kid, I was like 8 years old. I lived in Brooklyn, and my father's brother, who was my uncle and my godfather, had a recording studio in Manhattan. So when I was 8, I would get on the subway, go over on a Saturday, go over to his place and stay with him for the whole weekend and watch him record. And I would clean patch cords and set up chairs, and I would have to tell the musicians to take their shoes off, because you could hear the tapping. And I got to meet everybody. Les Paul was my uncle's best friend. They worked together on stuff. So Les was like Uncle Les to me. And I got to hang out with him all the time. And we'd go to hockey games and the fights at Madison Square Garden. And we were really very poor. And he always had a big wad of money, and he knew all the best restaurants, and he had a convertible car, and he had an apartment on the East River. And, I mean, all the things that were beyond me at that point. And then I got to meet everybody. I got to meet Bing Crosby and the Andrews Sisters, and you name it. Orson Welles, would come. And it was an amazing time. And so all I wanted to do, he was my idol, my uncle. I wanted to be just like him. So I kept going over there until I was about 13. And then I started hanging out with a gang, and I started getting in trouble, and I wound up on my 17th birthday enlisting in the Navy. My parents signed and let me, because otherwise I was going to go to jail at some point. And so I went in the Navy for a couple of years, and when I came out, my uncle got me a job at a studio called Ampex Recording Studios. So they wanted an apprentice. And so I got the job. I showed up Monday, and the owner of the studio took me in and introduced me to, there were 2 other engineers there. One guy was a German engineer who had a monocle and clicked his heels. I mean, it was really a character. And the other guy was Tom Dowd.
Oh,
and
wow.
so Tom and I became instant friends. I became like his kid brother. And that was it. For the 8 years, I worked with Tommy on and off. I was doing stuff, he was doing stuff, but he bought me a notebook to draw diagrams of setups and what mics to use. He showed me, where to put the mic, how to move the mic if it wasn't right, what mic to use to get a better sound if you wanted something brighter. We didn't have equalizers or compressors. Everything was hand compression. I wrote gain on the vocal. So, that's how I got my start.
Would you get a lyric sheet and make notes where you knew somebody was going to go up, or were you just doing it instinctively?
No, we learned as quickly as possible. Run the song down. There were a lot of groups recording then. And I remember watching Tommy, a great experience for me. We used the 44DX, and 2 voices would be on one side and 2 on the other. And he would stand there and listen to them. Then he'd go in and open the mic and listen. Then he'd run out and move one guy back a little bit. Then he'd come in and listen. And then he'd run out and move one guy in a little bit until he got the balance set. So, and that was it. And so everything was done that way. As I said, we didn't have equalizers or compressors, so we had to get it right. It was all done mono.
Live.
All live. No editing, none of that stuff. We didn't even have a tape machine back then. Everything was on acetate.
Oh, wow.
16-inch transcription disc. And then...
That's commitment.
And then we bought the first Ampex 300, mono Ampex. And we bought the first Telefunken U47s. They were $300 a piece back then. Can you imagine what they are today,
Yeah.
So, I wish I had bought 10 of them or something, if I had had the money. I was only making like $35 a week, so, it was very interesting.
That's a heck of a start.
Yeah, it was a great start.
When do you remember multi-track recording then?
Multi-track recording started after I came to California. Probably around 60, 61.
Mm-hmm.
We were going to 3-track, and then we went to 4-track, and then we went to 8-track, and then we went to 16-track.
Wow.
And when it finally got to 24-track, we'd be sitting around saying, what the fuck are we going to do with 24 tracks, you know? And now, you know, I get stuff in 120 tracks, you know, Pro Tools. Nightmare sometimes.
Oh, I can imagine.
You know, yeah, well, you know, a guy comes in, you got 5 kick drums and 5 snare drums. Okay, couldn't make up their mind, you know, at the time. Back in the old days, you had to make a decision. Now they just, oh, well, we'll worry about it later. So, and that's why everything takes forever.
Right.
Back then, we could do albums in 2 days, 3 days at the most. You had a total album done. Today, you know, it's months sometimes.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, was your first Grammy Moon River? Is that 60?
No, I lost on Moon River. I was nominated.
You were nominated on that?
I was nominated for Breakfast at Tiffany, which had Moon River in it, and I lost to Judy Garland at Carnegie Hall. The following year, I did Hatari, and that had Baby Elephant Walk and all, and that was my first Grammy. And that was in 1960,
61,
61,
61.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, hard to remember. So many years ago, so many Grammys ago.
I know, it's phenomenal. How many have you won? If you don't
I have 23 Grammys.
23.
20 regular Grammys, 2 Latin Grammys, and I have a Lifetime Achievement Grammy.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm proud of that one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Outside, I mean, mastering engineers have a lot more opportunities to win, but
today they do now, and you know, we opened a can of worms. Back then they didn't get Grammys, and then when we forced it to the point of letting them, and now, you know, they'll overrun everybody because they get anything they work on, they get a Grammy, you know.
Right.
And it's a little out of whack at this point, I think.
But
I think maybe Album of the Year, Best Engineer, that kind of thing. But all the other ones, I don't know about that. Right. You know, I go in anybody. I love Eric and I love Doug Sachs and I know a lot of great mastering engineers. But sometimes they don't do a thing. You know, they go in, they master your stuff flat, and that's it. And then their name is on it, and they wind up getting a Grammy for doing nothing. And that really irritates me. And I know I'm going to offend a lot of mastering engineers, but that's the way it is, you know.
Now, you were talking about Eric then. Eric, I'm going to pronounce his name right, Eric Boulanger?
Boulanger.
Boulanger, yeah. Sorry, I messed it up.
And that's why it's the bakery, because Boulanger in French is the baker.
Baker, right. Well, we're actually going to interview him in a few days. I was just thinking
he's great. You'll really like him. He's very articulate and a good guy and terrific at what he does.
I think one of the things, we were talking about, off camera, we were talking about, Jack Douglas, and I'm sure you know Shelley as well. And did you know Roy Cicala?
Oh, very well, yeah.
What I love about all of those guys is, like yourself, they come from a wealth of experience. And Eric being a classical musician as well is a big deal for me. Right. Because I personally grew up on classical music. That's I got into rock that way through classical.
Oh, okay.
And it's why I feel like I always gravitate towards, I don't know the right way, it's older souls. That sounds a little kind of like we're making ourselves feel super old. But I like the musicality of what we do. Yeah.
Well, I was fortunate when I was at RCA, I would be doing a big band with Billy Eckstein and Billy May and then Henry Mancini. Wow. And then I'd do Rubinstein and Heifetz and, and we did everything, country music. So it was the greatest place to learn because, we do 3 sessions a day and each one was a different type of music. Mm-hmm. And that would go on for 6 days a week. So, we got the polka music, you name it. We did it all, So it was a great learning experience to be able to capture sounds, specific sounds for certain artists. And yeah.
I mean, I assume you must have just learned your mic locker. You just knew with all those different things, you're like, I need a ribbon on this.
Absolutely. Well, that was how I learned, because I was taught again, we talked about this earlier, we didn't have equalizers, so our microphones were our equalizers. If you wanted a brighter sound on an instrument, you used a brighter sounding mic. So I learned how to use all the different microphones for different sounds, and where to put the microphone and how to listen and go inside and listen and run out and move the mic until you got exactly what you wanted. So to this day, I record with no EQ, and I mix my stuff with no EQ. I use EQ if I'm mixing something someone else did and I want to, shape it, but I don't on my stuff. And it's amazing. Pensato came in and he came over to look at the board, and I was doing the big band thing, and there was no equalizers, no compressors. He couldn't believe it. Yeah.
And you're using fader automation then, if you just want to bring stuff up and
down.
Yeah.
I use the fader automation, and I pan when I'm recording live, kind of like how I'm gonna mix it. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty much all set, and I make pretty much my moves like I was mixing while I'm recording. If the trumpets are open, they're at one place. If they're going into mutes, I get a cue. I bring them up so that, the balance is that way. And it's just the way I do things, the way I learn. I don't expect anyone else to do it that way, but that's the way I do it.
I mean, it makes logical sense to me. If you're in a room, we're in Capitol Room A, Studio A here, and we were talking earlier off camera how I came in and met Phil Ramone in here and was just like in awe because he had the chart over. So we come in and Phil is standing over the edge of the console and he's holding the string arrangement up and he has a pencil and he's changing it, like writing it with the arranger. And and I walk in with Jack and I'm all like sheepish and I turn to Jack and I go, "Hey, look, Jack, that's a real producer." And Jack starts laughing.
Well, that's for sure, man.
Because I can read and write music, but I'm not that guy. Nor's Jack. We're both like rock guys. We're not guys that can sit there and like rewrite the arrangement.
I did. I must have done 50 albums with Phil. That's cool. And he was one of my best friends, number one, but so much fun to work with, man. I'm telling you, every time I got a Phil Ramone date, I had a big smile on my face because it was always fun.
And just for a bit of context, it was about a couple of weeks before he died. So he was working right up until
he was. He was one of my best friends, Phil. I know him really well. I have a great Phil Ramone story. I did a magazine article for EQ or one of those magazines years ago, and they said, "Do you have any regrets?" And I said, "I have one regret. I never got to work with Frank Sinatra." Okay. 3 weeks later, I get a call from Phil. He said, "Hey, how you doing? We're chatting." He said, "What's your schedule?" And he gives me a 2 or 3 week period. I get my book and I'm cool. I write it down. He said, "Okay, what's your fee?" And I told him, and he kind of gulped a little bit that it was kind of high, but he didn't say anything. So, and we kept talking after that. Just before we hung up, I said, "By the way, Phil, who's the artist?" He said, "Frank Sinatra." I said, "Phil, if you told me that in front, I would have done it for nothing." And then he said to me, "Well, if you'd asked me for more, I would have given it to you," because there was evidently no budget for the Frank Sinatra record. So that was it. That was my opportunity to work with Frank. So I've done quite a few records with Phil, and one of the great ones, I was fortunate. I got to work with him a lot, and Tommy LaPuma. Tommy LaPuma and I did 111 albums together.
Wow.
So it's amazing. And David Foster and, some of the really great producers. Yeah.
I recently got to work with David and it was wonderful.
Yeah, he's amazing. Yeah. It's an amazing mind.
He said to me, he goes, "Oh, I've got an idea for the bass line in the bridge." And he said, "Play the track." So I played the track, and then he just in real time wrote down the bass line idea. Yeah. And then the bass player arrived, and he goes, "Here's what I want you to play." And I'm like,
"Yeah, boom, that's it." Yeah, those guys were great. They were musicians. Phil was a childhood violinist, a star. He played for the Queen of England when he was like 8 or 9 years old. Played on he won the Major Bowls contest, which amateur night contest. Yeah, he was a great musician.
I recommend his book to people all the time.
Yeah, it's fun.
Because it's all about the psychology of working with artists.
Yeah, it is. Not as good as my book.
Not as good as
My book is even better.
Even better here. Eric can get a close-up of the book we're holding here.
Sure.
I don't have a copy yet. I'm buying one.
Yes.
And we will also have links to buy them as well. So I couldn't help but notice, so there's a foreword by some new kid here, Paul McCartney.
Paul McCartney, yeah, he was, I love Paul. He's become a really good friend, and we did an album together. I worked a little bit on the last album, Egypt Station. But
when you and I worked, you had just finished Paul McCartney's album.
Paul McCartney, yeah, when we did Kisses on the Bottom album. Mm-hmm. And we became really good friends. So he writes a nice thing in there about Kisses on the Bottom, about how I would start telling stories about Sinatra and the airplane, and he would start telling stories. And it became a social event rather than a recording thing. It was really cool.
That's great.
He's a great guy. He did, we were in London at Abbey Road, Abbey Road 2, which is where the Beatles did all their stuff. And he told a lot of Beatles stories and things. But I was outside on my cell phone talking to my daughter. It was her birthday. And he came out and he stood in front of me, and I said, my daughter, I'm wishing her a happy birthday. And he took the phone, sang happy birthday to her, and then gave it back to me. And my daughter said, nobody will believe this. Nobody will believe that he said.
That made me want to cry. That's beautiful.
I know. That's the kind of guy he was. I think Paul is the nicest guy I've ever worked with in the record business. It's just not.
I respect that story a lot because not everybody is that self-aware.
Yeah.
He was self-aware that would have meant something. It wasn't a showing off moment.
No,
there was no cameras around.
That was right. Exactly.
He knew that meant something. Yeah.
He told us too about when the Beatles first started there. They couldn't come in the front door at Abbey Road. They had to go around the back because they looked like hippies and stuff. Yeah, cool. Yeah, he's a great guy. One of the best.
That's absolutely amazing. So tell us. I mean, I could keep asking you about your career, but I suppose we can cut to the chase because that is a lot about what the book is.
Yeah. The book is how I started. It's got a great story on the first session I ever did. Should I tell that story?
Please.
Okay. So I'm working 3 months now under the tutelage of Tommy Dowd. And so they finally say, okay, Al, you can work on Saturday by yourself. You come in, and all we had on Saturdays were little demos. And it would be some guy'd come in and play Happy Birthday to his daughter. Some guy would come in and play piano of a new song he wrote. And we'd cut a disc and give it to him, and they'd give us $15. So I had 3 guys that day. I had a guy at 10, a guy at 12, and a guy at 2. So I do the guy at 10, I do the guy at 12 to get the money, and the guy at 2, I'm waiting for is Mercer in the books. And the elevator doors open, and all these musicians start walking out. They want to know where the studio is. I said, well, the studio is there. Well, we got a recording session for Mercer Ellington. Mercer Ellington, Duke Ellington's son. They had a label called Mercer Records. Mm-hmm. So I said, oh, no, there's a big mistake. And I said, no, 2 o'clock. And I said, oh, my God. So I tried to call Tommy. I couldn't reach him. I tried to call my boss. I couldn't reach him. So I remembered the notebook that Tommy had bought me with diagrams. So I found a big band setup, and I went out. We only had 8 inputs. So there was only 8 mics I had to set up. So I set up the mics, I set the chairs, and musicians are coming in and sitting down. And Duke Ellington walks in, and I said to him, Mr. Ellington, this is a huge mistake. I said, I'm really not qualified to do this. And he looked out in the studio, he said, well, setup looks fine. The musicians are all out there comfortable, starting to play and, warming up. And I said, yeah, but you don't understand. I've never done anything like this before. He said, don't worry, son. We'll get through this. And he started patting me on the leg because I think he thought any minute I was going to faint. I'd probably turn Snow White. And so we got through it. We did 4 songs in 3 hours. and got through it. And he thanked me at the end, and it went. And I thought, oh my God! After it was over, I just recorded Duke Ellington Band. I couldn't believe it, because I was into big bands all my life, and those were the records I collected, and and I knew all the players, Billy Strayhorn on piano, and it was just amazing. So, but that's how I got my feet wet. And
that's one
and I think
heck of a way to get your feet wet.
I understand. And I think if I had found out the night before that I had to record,
you would have not slept.
I
would
would have
obsessed.
either not slept, or I would have called in sick and had them get someone else.
Yeah.
But I was, so that was it. And that got me started.
I think that's an amazing story.
And Tommy Dowd was so proud of me when I played the stuff for him, and he was that was great. It sounds wonderful, and we went on, and then they started having confidence in me, and I was starting to do a lot of Atlantic records, the Coasters, and Clyde McPhatter, and all those bands that Atlantic Records had signed up, and so Tommy and I were splitting a lot of the work. So
I think I've used this quote quite a few times, but I when I was a musician, I worked with Dave Jordan, who's a great engineer and producer.
Yeah.
And Dave's when I was asking him questions about his job, he said, sometimes my job is to get in there as probably from production side and like rewrite the song and do crazy stuff and tempo changes, key changes, and sometimes it's just get out of the way of the band, out of the way of the artist, and just help them make a great record.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. That's it. It's not about you. If you notice on albums, the artist's name is on the front.
Yes.
Yours is on the back if you're lucky.
If you're lucky, yeah.
So just remember what you're doing is an artist's record. So,
I remember when you bought the Beatles albums, first 30 years they were out, the only production name that was ever on it was George Martin.
Yeah.
It didn't even have Jeff Emmerich or...
Right, nobody. Yeah.
Yeah?
Well, but years ago at RCA, they didn't put the engineer's name down. Producer and small print on the back. Finally, that we started with Mancini, I started getting engineering credit. So, it took a long time for that to happen. And, back then, if they were giving out Grammys, back then, like they are today, I would have about another 15.
Right.
Because back then, you didn't get a Grammy for Album of the Year or Single of the Year. Now you do. And you didn't back then. So there were so many records, like all the Mancini things, Toto, Natalie Cole, Unforgettable. I got a record, Engineering, but for Album of the Year, the engineer didn't get a Grammy.
That's crazy.
Or Single of the Year. Yeah, no, it went on. So I'm telling you, I would have probably 35 Grammys.
I mean, how many... I know you've worked with some of the greatest producers of all times, but as an engineer, I've made quite a few records where I've been the only member of the production staff to be there quite often. So
many times, that's how I got into producing records.
Right.
Producers would show up and be on the phone all the time, and I'd be doing all the stuff, telling guys what to do, and I tell the musicians we're on our own, we're on the honor system, guys. So because this guy isn't hearing anything, and then so I wound up. They were making all the money, getting all the credit. So at RCA, I got promoted up to be a producer. Fantastic. And then I was, I wound up with 11 artists, and I was producing Sam Cooke and Glenn Yarborough and all these different, the Limelighters, all these different groups, Jefferson Airplane. And it got to be a little too much at one point, and that's when I quit and went on my own, became independent. And then I was doing just the Jefferson Airplane independently and making a hell of a lot more money than I was making when I was doing 11 artists for RCA.
That's amazing. Now, what I love about your book is you've got stories, but you've also, for those people that are into this, which obviously a lot of our viewers are, there's some technical stuff in here as well.
Oh, yeah,
a lot
diagrams.
Of really great technical stuff.
There's a lot of good stuff, easy, not complicated to read.
I think what I admire most about it is like here, where for instance, where you're talking about, cardioid, bidirectional, omnidirectional, you're describing how microphones hear, how they hear sounds. But you're also giving examples, like real world examples of why you would do that and why it sounds like that. This is like a little mini Bible on recording.
Yeah.
And mixed with a really inspirational story.
Yeah, there's a lot of great stories, really. A lot of good stories in there. And then there's a lot of nice things in the back of the book about people I worked with. It's what I learned from them.
Great.
And in a lot of cases, what they learned from me. So, yeah, it's pretty cool.
I mean,
I recommend the book to everybody. It's a Christmas present.
Marvelous. Well, this will be out before Christmas. We'll make sure this is out.
Oh, you got to let me know. So
yes, absolutely.
My wife loves to watch these things.
Right. Good. How long have you been married?
25 years. 26. Oh
26.
26
Trust
years.
me, I understand you.
Yeah. I got into trouble with drugs and alcohol. And it was really affecting my life, affecting my social life, affecting me. So come January 17th, I'm going to have 31 years of sobriety. I quit drinking and drugs 31 years ago, and it changed my life. Changed my relationship with people, and I met my wife sober, and that was a great thing. And my relationship with all my kids is fabulous. And so, yeah, it was the best thing I could have ever done for Al Schmitt, just put that aside.
That's amazing. Congratulations. Yeah. 31 years.
31 January 17th.
That's amazing.
Yeah, pretty cool. Yeah, the reason, and I share it in the book, there's a book thing in there on the book on sobriety. And the reason I share it so much is to let other young engineers know it's a little different today than it used to be. It used to be everybody had cocaine and everybody. It was just, we're smoking weed. But it ruined a lot of careers. And that's the reason I bring it up, is that, it's important that, if you can be a social drinker and have a glass of wine and that kind of stuff, great. See, I was just the opposite, So, it's a lesson to be learned. And
I think now it's more important than ever.
Yeah.
Because you probably remember, especially in the 70s and 80s, artists could get away with not showing up to the studio for 3 days.
Oh, that happened all the time to me.
Yeah, but now...
I got one story. I was waiting. I'm at the studio at RCA, and the phone rings. It's 8 o'clock. I pick up the phone and, hello, are we recording today? I said, yeah, I'm here. It's 8 o'clock. All right, we'll get the next plane down.
Get the next plane.
They were in San Francisco, So, yeah, that kind of stuff happened. Yeah. And we would work 8 to 11. We'd go to actually 3, 4 in the morning. But for after 11, there was really no work done. It was all social. Janis Joplin would show up, and David Crosby would come by with friends, and it became a social event. Everybody was smoking weed, doing blow, and taking acid, and it was tough. And as a producer, you're trying to get an album done and have some sort of control. It was really hard.
Yep.
Not easy.
And now it's more important than ever because budgets are so small.
Yeah.
If an artist does that, it's going to eat into their limited studio time, and it will kill their career.
Yeah. And I don't see it anymore. I don't see nobody smokes weed in the studio anymore, and that used to be all the time. And I don't see anybody doing blow or any of that stuff. So it's great. I think everybody got wise to the situation.
Well, Eric, you went to the bathroom earlier. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, right. That was it. Yeah, there were a lot of bathroom breaks.
Yeah. Were you ever friends with Don Smith? You remember Don?
Don, oh yeah. Are you kidding? Don and I were good friends.
He was
I love Don.
He was one of my first kind of mentors.
His son is an engineer, and he worked here.
I didn't know he became an engineer because I met him in '95.
He worked here for a while, yeah. And then went on his own. I'm not sure what he's doing now, but...
Oh, I'd love to track him down.
Yeah.
That would be amazing. Yeah. Don did the first album I did in America when I was a musician in '95, '96.
Wow.
And he was...
Where did you work then?
That was at Don's place in Agora.
Oh, right.
And we had the studio under the tennis courts. And and he had that little Neve, and that was. I remember he had a Fairchild, and one channel said Mick, and the other one said Keith. When he'd been working with the Stones, and he'd never taken the tape off.
Oh wow!
He didn't want to take it off.
Yeah, cool.
Like,
yeah, I love that Fairchild. Yeah, he was great. I liked him a lot, man. And yeah, it was sad when he passed away.
I know that he'd got like 3 or 4 years sober, and then he got liver cancer, didn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, his son is a great guy too, and was really, really sweet guy. And he worked here for, I don't know, maybe a couple of years, and then went on his own.
I haven't seen. Last time I saw his son would have been when making that record, like 22 years ago.
Wow.
And I remember we all went out, a group of us, for dinner. And my dad, unfortunately, who died recently, was a painter and an artist. And he and I, the son, were like talking, how do you rebel against your parents? Like, your dad is like this producer, recording engineer of like the Stones and Tom Petty.
Yeah.
And my dad's a painter and a sculptor. It's like, you know what I mean? Maybe we'll rebel and become an accountant.
Wow. Well, what kind of a painter was your dad?
He was a fine artist, a realist.
Yeah. And would I know? I collect art.
I don't think you'd know.
Oh,
I don't think you'd
okay.
know. But you'd like his work.
Yeah, I collect. I have a great art collection, and
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Who are your favorite artists?
Oh, Marston Hartley is one of my favorites. I am particularly fond of German expressionists.
Wow.
But I can't afford them.
I was about to say those are expensive.
But those, if I could, that's what I'd be collecting. But I have a great Yayoi Kusama painting, and she's gone through the roof now. She's unbelievable. Yeah, Milton Avery, American artist.
That's amazing.
Yeah, my wife and I started collecting about a little over 20 years ago. Putting your money in like a SEP account or something, it's the money's there and you don't ever get to enjoy it. So we started getting into art and buying paintings. And now, we have our investment on the wall of the house, all over. I must have 40 or 50 paintings.
That's amazing. Do you have any German expressionists?
No.
No?
No. We almost bought one. It was a tiny little head by Yavlinsky, and it was $1,000.
Yowza.
And it was just a little too much for that little painting. It was like not even 8 by 10. Yeah, and it was beautiful, but we seriously thought about it for a while and then said no. But we bought one painting by Marston Hartley, who's a very famous American painter, and we took a second out on the house to buy the painting. I mean,
wow.
That's
commitment.
It was, really. So, yeah, we're good. We love it. We get to enjoy it, and I'll show you some pictures later.
That'd be beautiful. Yeah. Yep. What have you got coming up here? What are you working on next?
What am I working on next? I'm doing a string thing coming up. Chris Walden is the arranger, and Nico Bolas is the producer.
Fantastic.
And he hires me to do the string thing. It's with the #1 Chinese artist who Nico went over and did the tracks in China.
Wow.
And so that's coming up next. I'm going over to Denmark to record a big band and a jazz singer over there in January. Promoting my book more than anything. I've been doing Sirius Radio and
great
that kind of stuff, and interviews left and right.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It took almost 3 years to write the book.
Yeah.
Because Maureen, who wrote the book with me, would come over on a Saturday and she'd hit the tape machine and we'd just talk. Mm-hmm. And we did that for almost 3 years until we were able to put the book together. So it took a lot of time. And now I'm getting pulled to do a lot of promotion on it. And I'm not good at that. I mean, I
think you're doing pretty good here.
I do well when I do it. I just don't like to do it, is what I mean.
Yeah.
I'm okay at it. I just did Pensado's place, and it came out so great that it putting one show on tomorrow, Friday, and one show next, and the second half next Friday.
Yeah,
so
great.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. The book is sold out. They're people are on waiting lists to get the book. So hopefully it'll keep going. I got a lot of people already asking for volume 2, and I don't know if I want to do that or not.
Well, you better get started if you are. It's going to take 3 years.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it won't take that long for this one, because most of the good stuff is in the first book. Oh, you read this thing about Neil Young in the back?
No. Al is the master. I love it when he gets pissed off. He is great. All right, so what's the secret with that?
There is no secret with it. I got pissed off at him when I did On the Beach. I co-produced On the Beach. And when we finished, we had made some roughs, mixes, so people could come in and we could play the stuff. So we wouldn't have to put the multi-tracks on and play stuff back. So we made these rough mixes. So when it was done, I said, okay, when do I start mixing? He said, no. I love these rough mixes. That's what we're going to use. I said, no, you can't use them. I said, look, I'll pay for the studio myself. Just that, no, you could do whatever you want, but this is what's going on the record. So that's what he's saying. I got a little pissed at him for that.
And is that what ended up being on the record, the roughs?
Yeah, those are the roughs.
And how do you feel about it now?
I wish I could remix them. Yeah, On the Beach.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I bought the record.
Yeah.
Yeah. I grew up a huge Neil Young fan.
Yeah, I love Neil.
Yeah.
We just did a thing on his last album with 100 pieces.
Wow.
65-piece orchestra, 35-voice choir.
Wow.
We did it over at Sony Scoring Stage, which is a fantastic room, by the way. It's just so expensive. But, it's an amazing record. A lot of fun. And some of the stuff, I think 3 or 4 of the tunes we did one take down. He stood right in the middle of the orchestra and sang live. And we went right to multi-track and 2-track. And some of the stuff is the 2-track, right from the console. Yeah, it was really cool.
That's amazing. When you're mixing orchestra, do you find that you lean on your room mics because the players know how to work off each other?
Somewhat, but you know what I learned many, many years ago is that to go out and stand by the conductor and listen to what it's like in the room. And then you go in, it's up to you to try to capture that, what you heard out there. But the other end of it is like, all of a sudden in bar 38, the French horns are overwhelming everything. Well, it's a team. You go out, you talk to the arranger or the guy that's conducting and say, look, in bar 38, can you hold the French horns back a little? They're killing me. Yeah, or bar 62, can you give me a little more cello? And that's it. So it's a team thing, Yeah, and I love doing orchestra. I would say the more musicians, the easier it is to do and the more fun, So, yeah.
I was recently at Air Studios for an event, and they had, at the end of this orchestrated piece, there was a solo girl singer. And we pulled up the room mics, and the whole orchestra just ducked. It was so beautiful.
Wow.
They just ducked, so everything was just completely balanced.
Oh, how cool.
And it was just a great lesson to learn as a rock and roll musician, like, oh yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Understanding dynamics.
Yeah, I love doing that stuff, really. Some of my favorite. Big bands, big orchestras, that's the stuff I enjoy the most. There's nothing like when you put up the faders and a big band comes out at you, it's like, whoa, man. I get goosebumps all the time. I just love that.
You've got tens of people out there. Their whole life is devoted to playing an instrument.
That's right.
So they're all, it's not like pulling up a sample or something like that. You've got all of these brains working
Right.
together, and
The
it's all
greatest
inspiring.
thing about when you get to a position like I am now, or like a lot of other you get to work with the best of the best. So when you hear that band, I mean, you got the best trumpet section in the world, the best trombone section, the best saxophones. I mean, it just doesn't get any better. And it makes your job easier. You know, the more successful you get, the easier it is to do what you do. At least that's how I feel.
Absolutely. But as you said, you started off doing $15 2-hour sessions.
Yeah,
of
exactly.
Live
Right.
to acetate.
Little piano and
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
And then Duke Ellington walks in and says, "Oh, by the way, we're recording."
Yeah, I do. You know, it was like he walked in. It was like Babe Ruth and Joe DiMaggio coming in the room. You know, these were all my idols because the first record I ever bought was a big band record. It was just big band, and so yeah, I love big band music, and I got that a lot from watching my uncle record. You know, they took the shoes
So
off.
what was your uncle's name?
Harry Smith.
Harry Smith.
It was Harry Smith's recording. He was very famous. He did the Benny Goodman's Sing, Sing, Sing record, which was just a classic. And he worked for Brunswick for years as an engineer. And then he started the first independent recording studio in New York City. He did Frank Sinatra's first ever record.
Wow.
Yeah. He was recording a band from Jersey, and Frank evidently sang with the band at times, and he came over, and then they did one of the songs with Frank. So it's in Frank's book.
That's
And
amazing.
that's where the first, it was great. Those were days, man. It was just, and you know what what did for me? Instead of being in awe of celebrities, it did just the opposite. That I realized that these were people like my aunts and uncles, and they were all, I was an 8-year-old kid, 9 years old. Everybody was nice to me, you know, and they talked to me, and so I wasn't impressed by anybody. Oh my God, that's Bing Crosby. You know, he was just a really cool guy and nice to me. And Art Tatum, one of the greatest pianists, he'd take my hand, and he would just show me little boogie-woogie licks on the piano. You know, it was just wonderful to be around people like that, and not be overly impressed. You know, it's not like you see a movie star and whatever. You know, you can't talk. It was just the opposite. So I learned to be around these people. You know, as I said, Les Paul was like, he was another uncle. You know, and Uncle Les, he always messed up my hair all the time, and even when I got older, he did it, and it used to piss me off because, you know, back in those days, you had to have your hair just right. You know? And I was getting an award in a Tech Award, and Tommy Dowd gave it to me, and Les was there, and everybody. So we're all sitting at the table, and my wife was there, and Les had never met her, and I said, Les, I want to introduce you to my wife. It's my wife, Lisa, Les Paul. And Les looks at my wife and says, you're a hell of a lot prettier than the woman he was with last night. You know, it's just, that's the way he was. He was a little curmudgeon, but I loved him to pieces, man. He was so cool.
It's Les Paul, so I suppose you probably cut him a little bit of slack.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a little curmudgeon, you know.
Yeah.
That's what he was. He was always had this pixie smile and always pulling little jokes on people and stuff.
I want to ask you a question I think like a fan would want to know. And like, of all the people you worked with, who's the one? Is there one that you just feel like, you could have
Well,
worked with him?
Sinatra, obviously, because I was, I used to play hooky from school or go see him at the Paramount Theater and all, and he was my idol growing up. But I think Paul McCartney is probably the nicest person I've ever worked with in the business. He's just an amazing guy, and so much fun to be around. And, you know, he introduces himself to everybody, and, you know, hi, I'm Paul McCartney. Like, no
No
Really?
kidding.
Yeah, he's really just a cool guy.
Now, when I think of Paul, I from what I know of him, I obviously don't know him, but from what I know of him, he grew up listening probably to some of the records you were making.
Yes, that's true. And the stuff we did on Kisses on the Bottom, those were songs he always wanted to do, and they were songs when he was a kid. They had a piano, a roller piano, and on Friday night, they'd roll up the rug, and all his aunts and uncles and people would come over, or they'd go over their house, and they would sing all these songs, Bye Bye Blackbird, all that kind of stuff. And he always wanted to do that. He didn't think he could. He wasn't sure if he could. And that's why he got with Tommy LaPuma, and Diana Krall, who laid out some of the stuff. And we were here when we did the first one. They did the first couple takes. I didn't think we were going to make it. I didn't think it was going to happen. And then all of a sudden, it's like a light went off, and he got it. He knew how to do it, and he went in and nailed it. And that was it.
That's amazing.
And then, it was cool.
I see. For me, I can imagine he's a fan of the music that you've made, that you've recorded, and the artists you work with. And so for him, it's probably full circle. It's all coming together.
Yeah.
I know this is maybe a good question, because I know as I've got older, the things I loved as a kid, I now love more than ever.
Yeah.
Because it's that first experience. When you fall in love with a piece of music, it's like, I can't think of a better analogy, unfortunately. It's like being a junkie. It's like, it's the first high. When you love that piece of music.
And you keep chasing that one. Yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah, absolutely. I bought a Jimmy Lunsford record. I saved up, it was $1.25. And it was a 12-inch 78. First record I ever bought, I was 11 years old.
Wow.
And it was a big band record, and I just loved that record. I played it and played it and played it and played it. And then, of course, Woody Herman, the big band days were coming, and Caledonia was a big, big hit back then. And, the big bands were the thing. It was like, they were like the rock and roll bands of today back then.
The power.
Stuff.
Yeah. You just go there and you got this massively powerful orchestration hitting you. That's absolutely incredible.
And we were dancing back then too, Lindy Hop and Jitterbug stuff, and similar to what they're doing today.
When you hear that first record you bought again, does it just take you back to that time?
Yeah, it takes me back to little kid saving my money to buy it too. We were really poor, so I set up pins at the bowling alley and make a little money, and that's before automation on the bowling alleys when had someone down there. Or I shine shoes on Saturday. I'd go and shine shoes to make a little extra money. So my father, we were really poor. And so my father said, I wanted to wear peg pants. That was the big thing, And he wouldn't buy them for me. It was expensive and all. But he said, if you earn the money, you want to buy them, go ahead. So that was it for me. 11, 12 years old, I was out earning my own money to buy my own clothes. I had to buy my own baseball glove. We just didn't have any money, we were lucky we ate back then. So,
I understand. I relate to all those feelings. I remember I had my Clark's shoes when I was a kid, and I polished them, like really super polished, and I wore them until my feet could was squeezing out of them. And I stole a pair of my mum's white socks so I could look like a mod.
Yeah.
And I was wearing my mum's white socks, and I took my black trousers and curled them back up so you could see my white socks.
White socks, absolutely. Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
It was, music was so powerful. It drove the fashion. It drove.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the music was the way we danced, the way we dressed.
Yeah.
We used to, Billy Eckstein was big back in those days, and he used to wear these shirts, and we called them Mr. B collars. They were widespread collars. And that was it, saving our money to buy a Mr. B shirt. Well, thanks, Warren.
Oh, thank you.
It was really a joy. Man.
It was amazing. It was a lot of
good
fun.
to hang with you. You know, we didn't get to do that when we were working.
I know. Well, when you have Stephen in the room.
Yeah, I know. He takes over.
Stephen Tyler's a lot of personality.
Yeah.
A lot of personality.
He's cool. You know. I did a thing with him, and you know, he's in the program too. And so Nico Bolas had his number. We called him up. I had just finished mixing this song, and where he sang, it was on the Chris Bodie record. And so we got on the phone and tell him how amazing he sounded on that song. So it was pretty cool. He was very pleased hearing that.
I love what we're touching on, the people you admire also being fans of music.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I actually had an experience with Stephen when we were trying to get Sarah Dash's number. Remember, because she had sung on Keith Richards'
Right.
I Can Almost Hear You Cry.
Yeah.
She'd done that. And so Jack got Keith Richards. No, he got Steve Jordan's number, and we called Steve Jordan. And Steve's like, oh, hold on, I'm recording. And in the background, you hear Keith Richards singing. And then he gets back on, and Keith comes up to the phone, and we were like little kids.
Yeah.
It was like, we're all crowded around the speakerphone, Steven Tyler, Jack Douglas, and me. Obviously, I'm nobody with these two guys. And it's like, all right, Stevie. And, which is funny because nobody can call Steven Tyler anything other than Steven, but Keith Richards can.
Yeah.
And it was just like, and then you realize no matter who you're with, everybody's a fan of something.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm sure Frank Sinatra was a fan of something, even though he's probably like the echelon for us.
Yeah, no, he definitely was, you know. There was Kate Smith was a heavyset woman who sang God Bless America, and it was a huge, successful thing. That was he thought she was the best female singer he had ever heard.
That's amazing.
And, you know, not like somebody like Billie Holiday or, you know, but her.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're all inspired by something to do what we do.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Well, thank you ever so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. It was great.
So everybody, little infomercial here. Yeah. Please check out this book. It's absolutely wonderful. Highly recommend it. Like I said, the thing about it is it's a kind of book that I would want to read because it's a combination of technical. So from an engineering production point of view, you get that, but you also get it balanced with reason, logic, why you chose that gear, and also how you work with artists.
And a lot of great stories, about working with artists and all. And it's an easy read. Most people sit down and can read it in one night. You know, it's not like, it's not like I'm reading Da Vinci's biography. You know, it's like this thick. Yeah. I've been reading it for about 3-4 months now.
I can imagine.
And I'm not even halfway done, so, yeah.
That sounds good, though. Leonardo da Vinci's biography sounds pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's an amazing book, and he's just an amazing guy. God, unbelievable.
He really was the Renaissance man.
Yeah.
Yep. Marvelous. So check it out. It's Al Schmitt on the record, behind the magic behind the music.
Right.
And as ever, please leave a bunch of comments and questions below. Thank you ever so much. Thank you.
Thank you.